Hey everyone, before we start today's episode, I would just like to start with a little bit of a trigger warning. We are going to be discussing some sensitive topics today in a very, very roundabout way, not getting graphic or anything about anything. But still, if this concerns you and you'd rather not listen to these things, feel free to skip this episode. There's nothing else in here. You won't be missing anything else. And when we get to the next episode, it will be all normal stuff. I promise you, I will never throw anything like that without giving you a warning up front. So this is your warning. You have now or throughout the music to disconnect. I'm delaying to give you a couple of seconds there to find your skip button. Thanks for listening, and here we go with the episode. Hi, I'm Joe.
And I'm Heather.
And this is the Decahedron RPG Podcast. Hey everyone, this is Joe. No James this week, but instead we have Heather. Hi, Heather.
Hello.
We're not firing James. Jason sent me a voicemail the other day, and in it he said something that I said that would be an excellent topic, and I would like to discuss that with a social worker. And I just happen to know a social worker who's my daughter. And I said, let me ask her if she'll be on the show. And she graciously said yes. So today Heather is putting on her social worker hat, and we're going to discuss some things. But before we do that, let's play Jason's voicemail once again.
Hey guys, Jason here. Sorry for the late call. Just listened to your Sex and D&D episode. For some reason, my podcatcher didn't catch it initially. But I want to say that I'm with you. I am a fade to black kind of guy. Definitely there's times when you know, it's appropriate in a game, whether you come up against a succubus or somebody casts a charm person on you, trying to get you to do something, and you role play a little bit of that out. But anything that actually, you know, once you get to that physical contact stage in the bedroom, you just fade to black and, you know, open up on the next scene. And I tend to run a lot of sword and sorcery games, but we've never seen the need to play out anything like that. So I don't think you have to do that at your table. Take care of yourselves, keep up the great work, and I will talk to you soon.
All right. So thanks again for that feedback, Jason. There were one or two things that you said in there that when I was listening to it with modern ears, I was like, wow, that's actually a little cringy. And one of those was, you know, you were talking about a person being under the influence of a charm spell and being forced to, let's say, perform. And the other one you said was the succubus, but it was really the charm spell one. And I guess we could even go all the way back and say like a love potion. And I was like, wow, that's very unconsenty. And that just struck me as amazingly creepy. And that also brought to mind those infamous safety tools that people like to debate. Some people are like, you are a horrible gamer if you do not use the X card. And other people are like, why would you use that type thing? So that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's start with the safety tools. Then we'll go to a couple other topics from there. So when I talked to you about this earlier this week, you said you never heard of the X card, you never heard of lines and veils, and that these situations don't come up in the game that you play.
No, and I hope they don't because they're cringy. No, we have not used them. We're doing a pre-written campaign, and I'm on your side. They're cringy. They don't really need to be in there. There's no point. To me, there's no point.
Right, but there's other people that enjoy gaming in their own way, and I won't slam them for it other than to say I'd rather not be a part of that game. That game isn't for me. You agree? So when you sat down to play with this group, was there any discussion that these type of topics won't come up or anything like that?
No, but I did send the one article you sent me to the group, and then we might talk about it tonight, but I also don't think my group's the type of group who would...
Where those topics would naturally come up.
At least in the game.
Okay, so was that the article about the X card, or was that the article about the lines and the veils?
X card.
Did you read the one about the lines and the veils?
Briefly.
I'm going to summarize what they all are. Actually, I'll do it one by one. As I do it, you can tell me your thoughts and you think it would be useful in the game. So the X card is pretty much a card with an X on it. A person can have it in their hand and hold it up if something objectionable comes up, or it can be in the center of the table and they can touch it. And it's pretty much their signal that they want whatever topic is coming up, is up, or whatever to go away.
Yes.
All right. So what do you think of that idea?
I like that idea. And I think depending on the people you're campaigning with, did I say that right?
Yeah.
You should know the people you're with, and you should know maybe some of their history if they're comfortable sharing with you. Like I would, if I were playing this game with the kids I work with, I'd have to be really careful because most of my kids have been through all kinds of abuse, and that would be a trigger for them.
So then the other thing you were saying then was knowing your players. So in general, I will agree with that. And that's going to bring us into the lines and veils in just a second. But I, for example, a lot of my playing is online on Roll20, and I just put up a listing. They call it looking for games. And anybody can click on that and say, hey, I want to join. So I really don't have that in-depth knowledge. It's not like James, who I've been playing with for 45 years. There is a complete stranger, someone that I've never met. On the other hand, I usually do post in the listing that adult topics don't come up in my game. So it's kind of there. All right. So you're in favor of the X card. I will say when I first heard about the X card, I was rather negative about it because I was of the mindset that you should know your players. But then again, I went through that whole thought process I went to. I think it makes sense if you're playing with strangers, or in the other thing is I don't deal with adult topics like that. And so it would never be an issue anyway. But if you're playing in that kind of situation, that kind of game, like a Powered by the Apocalypse type game where there are sex moves with people, and actually even at that point, it might be even people you know. I mean, people don't always bare their souls to their friends, right? So I can see value in that. All right, lines and veils is the fancy term for what you were just talking about. It's having the conversation before you start the game, saying, hey, these are things that I refuse to play with. Those are the lines. That's the lines that we will not cross type thing. The veils are the things that we can kind of talk about it, but in a veiled way. Yeah, people can't see me do the air quotes. In a veiled way. In addition to areas of consent, another area that a lot of people have problems with is torture scenes. I will say when I was young, I did have some players that wanted to go into very detail about how they were like trying to torture some orc for information or something. And I was like, you can just say you're torturing him. That's more than enough. I don't need the details. And so that would be a veil, although that term was decades away. But that's the conversation that you have before the game. That's getting to know the players. So it sounds like I'm going to take a guess that you would be in favor of that as well.
Yeah, to an extent. The people I play with were more on the humorous side. Like one of the characters, she has a robot that she can call out. He's a big bear robot, I think, and I can't think of its name. And like with one swipe, it can destroy everything. And usually the DM is really funny about it, and so he puts the humor on it. Yeah.
So kind of like cartoon violence versus graphic violence.
Yeah. And then I was going to say something. The ADHD is strong in me today. I do know what I was going to say with the veil. I think it's okay if like you're getting a side quest or a quest, if the person giving you that quest is alluding to something that happened to a child of his or somebody in the village. But I don't think it needs to be graphic. They can be like, my daughter was attacked by a gang of ruffians and I want revenge. You don't have to go into intense detail on what happened to that non-playable character. That's
actually a good point. That's speaking of veils. Yeah, I will often leave things very vague. A bad thing happened to somebody. What the bad thing is, I don't need to say what it was. It can mean one thing to me, another thing to the listener, and that's fine. The important thing is that a bad thing happened. All right, so I'm going to ask you this other question that kind of ties in with everything, and maybe it's more of a me thing. Why is it, at least for me, but I get the feeling, listening to other conversations, that it's not just me. Why is it that we can play a game that deals with physical violence and killing, and it doesn't bother us, but when sexual violence comes into the mix, it is suddenly cringy? This is why I asked for a social worker hat.
Because people are using sex as a power tool, and they're using it as something that was never meant to be. And I think you and I are going to have similar views on what certain things should be because we have a similar background. And when you're using something that's not intended for that, it's cringy. It's taking power away from that victim. Yeah, it's all about You're using it for power, and it's supposed to be like the ultimate sign of love between you and a person.
Would it be fair to say that people are more likely to be triggered by scenes of that kind of violence versus the other kind of violence that we often talk about? The normal, I hit him with a sword.
I think when we're playing these kind of games, we mostly put ourselves in the hero role. And so when we're hitting somebody with a sword, we're doing the good thing. We're trying to defeat the evil or the bad or what the game is defining as the wrong side. So there's a moral high ground.
So are there any other topics that you think are particularly cringeworthy, not necessarily to yourself, but like to a large audience? The three I know off the top of my head are sexual violence that we've already talked about, torture that we've kind of already talked about, and forced labor, to put it nicely, enslavement type things. Anything else?
Violence is a big one. It could be, well, also I'm thinking about the population I work with. I've worked exclusively with at-risk youth, youth with high needs who a majority of them come from abusive backgrounds. So like even the littlest thing could trigger something in their mind, like even if it's an argument between the innkeeper and the patron who hasn't paid their bill, like that could trigger something. But within the game, the players would have those coping skills they have and the reminder that it's just a game.
So just out of curiosity, I know you can't share much about your residents. I know you can't talk, but do any of them game that you know of?
When I worked in a long-term care facility, I worked with juvenile sex offenders. We had staff who were teaching them how to play D&D, but they would create the character sheets. But it developed a good coping skill for them. The kids I have now, I work in emergency shelter care. So sometimes we have a kid for 2 days, sometimes we have them for 2 months. So we wouldn't ever be able to do long campaigns. And I don't have enough resources yet to do really short campaigns.
All right. Well, I think that's everything we had to talk about. Was there anything you wanted to add?
Sorry, I'm scatterbrained. I've been playing this all week, but I've had a headache all day. So
it's okay.
No.
All right. Well, then, Heather, thank you very much for joining me. I hope to have you back on the show again sometime.
Yeah. We're planning on it, and you're planning on bringing Keith.
Oh, yeah, I should say Heather was the one, actually, the episode that triggered all this, the whole Sex and D&D episode. You and your husband, Keith, provided the awesome voices of Phil and Dixie at the beginning of the show, which you had never heard of. You had never seen the What's New strip. Did you read any of them after I sent you the link?
Keith read more than I did, and he got a kick out of them.
Yeah, they were funny. They used to be the first thing I would flip to every month when I got a new issue of The Dragging. Thanks much for joining me. I know that we will have you back on the show, and have a great week, everybody. Thanks for listening. Feel free to send in that feedback. And next week, we will go back to more normal topics without trigger warnings. Bye.
Oh, goodbye.
Yeah, they can't see you wave. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Decahedron RPG Cast. We'd love to hear from you. You can leave us a voice message by calling 562-774-2278. That's 562-RPG-CAST. Or by visiting sayhi.chat/Decahedron. You can also email us at feedback@decahedron.com. Links are in the show notes. For more information, visit decahedron.com. Remember that Decahedron is spelled with a K. Music is by Kevin MacLeod. Logos by Design Cat. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, keep those dice rolling.